Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. Let's take a look at a video.
It has like not a million, but like a lot of different authors, and also there's 4 birth stories.
One author. God is the author, but a lot of people transcribe. Okay, right. So what you're talking about is, again, there's one author, many transcribers.
So the notions that the Bible has a single author, who is God, are both flatly precluded by all available data. There are absolutely no data that point in the direction of there being a single author who is God. That's just a dogma that a person chooses to accept, because Kirk doesn't provide any evidence whatsoever. He just asserts this because he can't provide any evidence, because all the evidence unilaterally precludes it. But once you choose that dogma and assert it, you'll find that you run into problems of logic and consistency, as Kirk is not going to discover at the end of this video, because he cannot think self-critically.
Like what? You mean like the birth of Jesus?
Yes.
But they're not contradictory. That's actually a proof.
They are contradictory.
How is the birth of Jesus? Explain to me. I'm
certain. Some of the stories say that it happened at a different time. Some of them say that they happened at a different place.
No, that's interesting. So that's not contradictory. That actually proves the point. So for example, if right now, God forbid, there was a big car accident and there were 5 witnesses, someone would say, well, I think he was wearing a yellow shirt. And someone would say, well, I think it was like a yellowish red shirt. And someone would say, I think the car was red. And then what the fact gatherer does is they'll see a pattern between that. Because even when you have a lot of eyewitnesses, not everyone's eyewitness will be exactly the same, but everyone will agree, oh, there was a car accident. And that's how the birth of Jesus was. They weren't disagreeing that there was a virgin birth or that it happened in Bethlehem, but some of their details might have been inconsistent, which actually proves the Bible is true. It proves that they were not all deriving off the same canonical document. It proves that these were 4 different accounts that went out to try to find the truth. And people might have had different variations of it, but they were talking about the same elemental events.
There are 3 main catastrophic flaws I want to point out. First, Kirk just got done saying there's one author who is God and multiple transcribers. Now he's retreating to this apologetic defense of the inconsistencies between the nativity accounts of Matthew and Luke by saying, oh, the stories are different because each one has a human author who is fallible. You can't have it both ways. Either there's one infallible divine author and multiple transcribers, or there are multiple fallible human authors. The second catastrophic problem is that the differences are not in the kinds of details that people who witness a single event would disagree on. The differences are fundamental differences in the structure of the narrative. Matthew has them in Bethlehem. They have no connection to Nazareth. Jesus is born. Herod finds out, tries to kill Jesus. They must flee to Egypt and wait until Herod dies, which happens around 4 BCE. Then they try to come back, but they can't settle in Judea because Archelaus, Herod's son, is in charge in Judea. They're warned in a dream. They flee to Nazareth so that the prophecy can be fulfilled that says he will be a Nazarene. That fundamentally disagrees with Luke's account, which has Joseph and Mary living in Nazareth, but he needs to get them to Bethlehem to fulfill the prophecy about Jesus being born in Bethlehem. So he says this is in the days of Herod, but then he says they had to go to Bethlehem to register for this census that occurred under Quirinius, the governor of Syria. That happened in 6 CE, a full 10 years after Herod's death, and it happened because Archelaus was deposed by Rome and they took over direct rule of Judea. And so they come down to Bethlehem. Jesus is born. They don't go anywhere because they're under no threat. They present Jesus at the temple after they have fulfilled their 33-ish days of purification, and then they just go home. The stories are fundamentally different. They cannot be accounted for based on the notion that there are eyewitnesses who just perceived the details in different ways. Those are fundamental, irreconcilable differences. And this brings up the third catastrophic flaw. The notion that these differences prove the story is true is just bafflingly fallacious. They do absolutely no such thing whatsoever, because that argument would require that there be only 2 options. Either the stories are true or they colluded with each other to generate the exact same story. And because the story is not the exact same, well, it must be true. The only other option to which we must default as a result. And that's not how any of this works. The argument is not that they colluded to produce the exact same story. The argument is that different authors writing to different audiences for different reasons in different times and places drew from available traditions and other written accounts of what was going on and crafted their stories in ways that serve their own rhetorical goals. And that's why we have them living in Bethlehem and then only later fleeing to Nazareth, or living in Nazareth and coming down to Bethlehem to fulfill prophecy. So this argument is absolutely laughable. Kirk contradicts himself and then appeals to grotesquely juvenile fallacies that have absolutely nothing to do with how scholars talk about these stories. And the fit for this video has been Jim Lee's Wolverine.